Hey everybody, welcome back to WTF Cinema. Today's episode is going to be a little different than normal because we are reviewing an episode of Black Mirror. Now, let me start off with this. I like Black Mirror. I like it a lot. In fact, I think it's probably the closest thing we're going to get to the original Twilight Zone in terms of quality, in terms of unpredictability. If you haven't seen Black Mirror, I highly recommend it, but I also highly recommend skipping the first episode. It's okay, but I don't feel like it's indicative of what the series is trying to accomplish as a whole, and I really feel like it could turn a lot of people off from experiencing this great series. So, start with the second episode of the first season of the Black Mirror. If you haven't seen it, it's really great. That said, I like this particular episode too. I do, right up until I actually started to think about it, and then there were problems. So we're going to talk about them. And if you're thinking it's not fair to do an episode of TV on WTF Cinema, well, I've done 4 episodes of the original Batman and the TV series Lex. Plus, Black Mirror is an anthology series with no characters carrying over from one episode to another, and this episode's an hour and 15 minutes long. It's essentially a movie. Also, it's my show. I can review what I want. So, without further ado, this is Black Mirror's USS Callister. We open in what is very obviously a Star Trek parody. And I'm not even going to bother to use the made-up names they use in the show to avoid being sued by Star Trek. This is meant to be a version of the original Star Trek. A lot of our standard tropes are here. We have the brave, handsome captain, a hot alien with a Russian accent, a Weasley, whiny second-in-command, 2 minor support characters, and Nichelle Nichols on comms. I'm going to be honest, this opening sequence is actually pretty enjoyable. The captain is outgunned, but uses his wits and cunnings to conquer a superior opponent, all with an appropriate amount of very cheesy acting. And then we finish the episode with the crew cheering for the captain's bravery as he makes out with both of the female crew members. It's really quite well done. It's an excellent parody of Star Trek. We then meet our captain in the real world, and we start to see the real-world equivalents of the rest of his crew. And we're very quick to notice that our captain is not as brave and bold as he is on the ship, and he gets no respect from anyone else in this world. It turns out the captain is the chief technical officer of a video game company that specializes in a fully immersive space VR MMO game called Infinity. And now this all starts to make sense, right? Lacking the respect he probably deserves in real life, he created a simulation in this game where all the people who ignore him fawn over him. It's probably not the healthiest way to deal with this problem, but you can kind of understand how it would happen. A cute new employee comes in and just starts gushing all over him. I mean, she is fangirling all over the place. And so he takes some time to explain his love of Star Trek. His moment with the cute new girl is cut short when Weasley comes in and demands information on that new patch update. Turns out Weasley is the CEO, and he swiftly moves in on New Girl because apparently HR departments aren't a thing we have in the future. The captain's next trip into the game has a very different tone from the first one. A very different tone. Back in the office the next day, the captain overhears real-life Nichelle Nichols telling the new girl to avoid the captain, because he's a bit creepy and likes to stare at women. New girl says she's only interested in him professionally, and for some reason, that really bugs the captain. I'm not sure why. I don't know why this is the big turning point for the character. Because she's made it very clear that she admires his abilities, that she thinks he's amazing, and then he overhears this woman badgering her like, you don't like him, do you? Because that'd be weird. You don't like him. And she says, no, just professionally, I think he's great. And that's it. That's all it takes to set off our voyage of misery. At the end of the workday, everybody leaves, and the captain rushes over to the new girl's desk and steals her used coffee cup top from her trash. He then inserts that lid into a device which starts scanning her DNA to build a virtual representation of her in the game. something that won't finish until he's already at work the next day. When the system finishes scanning her DNA, a new version of her appears in the captain's game, and here we encounter our first very serious problem with this episode. Virtual New Girl has all of the memories up to the point where she drank the coffee. Memories aren't something that's traditionally stored in DNA, no matter what Assassin's Creed may be trying to tell you. But let's try not to focus on, this massive glaring plot hole right at the beginning of our episode. Let's find out what's really going on in this game. The rest of the crew reveals to her what we've already pieced together, that the crew are all DNA copies of people from his office, all shoved in this game so he can play with them at his whim. They also reveal that this particular version of the game is an offline modded version that he used to duplicate the look and feel of Star Trek. It's kept offline, privately, on his home computer, because apparently the main online game goes out and deletes any modded versions of the game that it finds. Kind of makes sense. The company doesn't want you taking their code and turning it around and doing whatever you want with it. So he has to keep it offline. This is a crucial plot point, and they mention it many, many, many times, that this little pocket universe that he's created is offline, stored locally on his computer, does not connect to the internet, so it can't be deleted by the main game Infinity. New Girl, of course, refuses to go along with this nonsense, and the captain decides to show her just how much power he has. It turns out nobody in the game can die without his permission, but they can still feel pain, such as not having a mouth to breathe out of. Turns out, when you can't die and you can't breathe, it's pretty awful. One of the supporting characters explains to the New Girl that only the captain has a working weapon, and there is no way to kill him. So the crew beam down to this planet to meet the main bad guy of this particular story arc in the game, who calls out his hideous space monster just in time for the captain to get alert on his communicator that there's a pizza at his door in real life. So he pauses the game, and his virtual body stays behind, frozen, while the rest of the characters are free to do whatever they want. And this really makes me wonder what pausing the game means. I mean, when he pauses the game, he logs out, the game keeps running, all the people can move around, talk, do whatever they want. So they are not paused even though they are the game. Now, I know, in actual MMO, you cannot pause. You can go AFK. You step away from your keyboard and your character is locked there waiting for you to come back while stuff moves around you, just like this. But I've never heard anybody saying, I'm going to pause this game real quick and go get my pizza, because the game doesn't pause. You just step away and stuff keeps happening. So I don't know why they insist on repeatedly calling this pausing the game. Nichelle tells New Girl that the hideous alien used to actually be a cute girl from accounting until she refused to play along with the captain's game. Now she's just another one of his twisted playthings. The captain manages to trick the villain by saying, "Look behind you, a naked lady," and then shooting him. And of course the villain has to fall for it. The villain begs for death. He says, "Haven't I been a good adversary? Please just let me die. I've done the best I could." But the captain refuses, because killing in cold blood is not the Starfleet way. After the captain logs out, the crew makes another revelation to New Girl. This is the one that breaks the bank for her. This is too far. And I think I'll let Captain Stan cover this one.
The thing is that she's smooth, right round the bend.
Yeah, because apparently Star Trek is too pure and noble to have something as degenerate as genitals in it. Forget the fact that Kirk was basically humping any alien girl that moved, as was Riker, and Quark's holosuites were very clearly being used primarily for sex. And of course, forget that in a universe without a sex drive, there wouldn't be kids who could grow up and join Starfleet. This is one of the weirdest character decisions for the captain in this entire show. Because you're telling me he has no sex drive at all. No desire to be intimate with these women who have spurned him in one way or another. He's created this entirely artificial universe where he is God, and he doesn't want to have sex with anything or anyone. And if that's the case, if he has no impulses in that direction, why is he kissing them after every mission? What is the point of making out with them if it can't lead anywhere? I mean, The twist that he's removed their genitals does add an extra layer of darkness and weirdness to the episode, but it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. Angry at the loss of her vagina, New Girl decides she is going to get out of there, and she decides to try hacking the captain's real-life apartment network. It must be connected to the game somehow, because he was alerted when he got the pizza on his communicator device that only he has. Once she completes that hack, she manages to send her real-world self a message from inside the game, begging for help. Real-life New Girl, of course, assumes it's some kind of prank on behalf of the captain, so she asks him about it, and he just plays it off, but boy is he pissed. So he decides to log into the game from work and punish his crew. I'm not sure how he logs into the game from work, since we're told many times that his game is an offline version stored locally on his home computer. I don't know how you can access something from the outside when it's deliberately set up not to have contact with the outside. So there's that. The captain goes to punish New Girl, but Nichelle Nichols jumps into her rescue, and she takes the punishment instead. She's transformed into a claymation beast. While New Girl is recovering from the shock, she notices a wormhole opening up, and the crew quickly learn that this wormhole is a gateway for the game's update patch that's coming out in a day or two. They realize that going through the wormhole would kill them. They would hit this firewall, and the data from inside the game wouldn't be allowed to transmit out, and they die, which is really, at this point, the best they can hope for. Except, how is the game getting patched if it's kept offline? Which, again, we're repeatedly told it is. How is the game connected to the internet when it's not connected to the internet? Now, I wanted to give the show the benefit of the doubt and say that when he logged on from work, it reconnected to the internet and he just forgot to take it back offline. Except they still don't address how he logged into it from his work computer when it's kept offline so it won't get deleted by the main server as rogue code. And if it's online now, because it must be, because it's getting patched, shouldn't it be deleted as rogue code now? Because that was the whole reason that he didn't want it connected in the first place, but now it's connected, but it's still not being deleted? There is this bizarre, circular non-logic at work here, and I just can't see a way out of it. The next problem is the ship can't fly without the captain logged into the game. So New Girl creates one of the most convoluted plots I think I've ever seen. The next time the captain logs in, she is going to somehow get his personal communications device, which we saw is linked to the outside world. She'll use that to call her real-world version of herself and blackmail her real-world version of herself with nude pictures of herself that she knows exists in that universe's version of the cloud. She's going to blackmail her real-world self into breaking into the captain's apartment while he's receiving delivery of a pizza that her real-world self will place for him, and then the real-life New Girl will replace his doohickey that lets him log into the game with a busted one, all of this in order to buy the crew time to fly into the wormhole and die, because as long as the game is online, but paused, they have autonomy over the ship, even though the game is not online, and that's not what the word paused means. Piece of cake, right? Weasley points out there's another problem to this, because apparently when this whole thing started, Weasley was the only crew member and refused to break, until the captain created a duplicate of Weasley's real-life son and shot him out of an airlock in front of him, and threatened to create and kill him over and over again until Weasley played ball. So he can't go along with New Girl's plan, because if they succeed, the captain would just recreate all of them all over again from the DNA that he still has in this mini-fridge, and it would happen to a whole new set, and it would be so much worse. So New Girl changes the plan. Now, instead of just replacing his login doohickey with a fake, she'll also make her real-life counterpart steal all the DNA from the fridge. Now everyone's on board with the plan. Only, how did that actually fix anything? Because all he has to do is get their DNA again in the real world. And as we've seen, it's super easy. A coffee cup here, a lollipop there, and boom! Also, there's some joke about him getting one of the supporting characters' DNA from the bathroom. The show doesn't go into detail about that, and I'm grateful. So, I realize that this new group wouldn't be the same people now. These people would still be freed, but Weasley didn't want to go along with the plan because the captain could just start this all over again. Which he can still do. Anyway, our plan begins. New Girl convinces the captain to take her down alone with him to a planet to investigate a crashed shuttle. Luckily, right next to the crashed shuttle is a nice, clear pond, and New Girl strips down to her underwear and starts swimming, inviting the captain to join her. Okay. So her plan depended on the random planet that they were going to for their next mission having a nice area to go swimming in. Also, she's seducing him to join her in the water. She's being very flirty, like, you know, come swim with me, we'll have fun. Despite the fact that he knows she's smooth right round the bend, because he designed her that way. And presumably, he's smooth round the bend too. The whole point of this guy, the whole reasoning behind his character, is that he is fanatically dedicated to this ideal that he's created in his head around Starfleet, around Star Trek. And I defy you to find a single episode of any Star Trek franchise where the captain, on his way to check out a distress call from a crashed ship, stops to take a sexy swim with a crew member that he can't have sex with. Anyway, the crew beams up his communication device while he's swimming, and they enact that entire plan I described, which I'm not going to go through again because it was complicated enough the first time. Her real-world self manages to complete the plan, steal the DNA, replace the doohickey, so on and so forth, and the crew beams up New Girl, and off they soar to the wormhole. Unfortunately, the captain has a backup login doohickey, and he logs in much faster than they were expecting, only to discover his crew has left him. Now he's pissed. The captain takes over the crashed shuttle, which apparently works fine despite crashing, and flies off after his former ship to get his crew back. So wait, he can't use his godlike powers to just teleport himself wherever he wants? He can transform people and have complete control over their avatars, but he can't actually just, like, boom, back on his ship? So this entire time that these people have been trapped in this hellish landscape, all they had to do was when there was an away mission and somebody was left on the ship, beam back everybody but the captain and take off, and just spend the rest of their lives being chased by him, which has to be better than being tortured by him, and this never happened? Unfortunately, a shortcut through the asteroid belt leaves their engines disabled. The wormhole is closing and the captain is catching up, and if they don't restore engine power quickly, their plan to die will fail horribly. The only way to fix the engines is the manual override, which is inside one of the engine jet propulsion housing thingies itself. So whoever activates it will be burned alive for all of eternity, since they can't die, but they can feel pain. So there's no OSHA in Starfleet, huh? Because who in their right mind would ever design a manual override to an engine that kills the person using it? Before the crew can even fully explain the situation to New Girl, Weasley has already volunteered and is on his way. As he prepares to sacrifice himself, Weasley talks to the captain one last time, and honestly, credit where it's due. It's a fantastic little speech, superbly written. This whole episode is actually worth watching, but this is the high point for me. And then Weasley sets himself ablaze to keep the ship moving. The crew manages to get through the wormhole at the last second, which we've been told this entire time would absolutely kill them. They are free. The end. Except not, because even though we were assured that passing through the firewall would delete them, all it actually did was strip away the Star Trek mod and return them to their normal bodies, genitals and all. And now they're trapped inside the massive MMO that is Infinity that he created. They're free to travel and live as they like, but they're surrounded by a-hole gamers. So, I'm not sure if that's really a happy ending or not. But at least we find out Nichelle Nichols is back in her body, and the main villain, he's back in a regular body for him. But what about Weasley? Was he allowed to die when they passed through this new game universe? Did the fire finally, let him die? Was he shot out through the back and left in the old universe? Or can they still not die, and he's still down there, burning and screaming for all of eternity? I don't know. We're never told, because I guess that would ruin the happy ending. Seriously, this guy sacrificed himself to save the ship, and we absolutely get no feedback on what actually happened to him. Nothing. We have no clue what his ultimate fate was. Because if he's still down there burning, all we got to do is shut off the engine and go get him. Right? Anyway, what happened to the captain? With the update complete, again, the update to the game that he kept offline so it wouldn't get updated and deleted, the game begins to delete his little pocket universe, trapping him inside of nothing forever, with no way to log out of the game because there's not a game anymore. It disabled his controls, deleted the game, and now he's just stuck floating in a virtual void until he dies. Which sounds really poetic, actually, until you know, think about it. First of all, we were told over and over again that he keeps his game offline so that this wouldn't happen, and then this happens. Over and over again we're told this can't happen because of the way he has it set up. Then it happens, and nobody questions it. This also means that the whole going through the wormhole to die plan that they did was completely unnecessary. All they had to do was sit their butt on that ship for another 6 hours, and when the update finished, they would have been deleted anyway. They would have died, which was their plan. I know now they're alive in the MMO, but that wasn't the plan. The plan was to just have the sweet release of death. And they could have had it if they just sat on their butts and done nothing. So the whole epic plan of this show is completely useless. And now you're telling me that this game, this massive MMO, has the ability to lock you in the game so you can't get out. This game has the ability to kill its users, and yet somehow still got sold. You're telling me that anybody who creates a mod of the game, if they're logged in when the update happens, are trapped in an endless void forever. How? I want you to imagine a video game that came out that could kill you like that, because you know people are going to want to mod the game. Also, okay, he's an important person. What happens when nobody hears from him for a week and they go check out his apartment? They see his body logged in. What happens when they remove him? Does forcibly logging him out of the game by removing the doohickey kill him? Because again, that's another safety concern. I don't think they'd allow something to be sold like that. And if removing the doohickey lets him log out, then there is absolutely nothing to stop him from doing this whole story all over again. He just has to get new DNA samples. And he can do the whole thing all over again. There's absolutely nothing to prevent this from happening again except his death at the hands of apparently a massively unsafe MMO. Oh my god. Like I said, Black Mirror is a great show, and this actually is a fun episode, unless you think about it. I really should learn not to think about things. Ever.